Hi, I'm Elizabeth Otters-White, the founder of No Dramaturg Coaching and Consulting, and this video is part of the Standout Professor set of resources, which are designed to help academics of all backgrounds and identities thrive. This particular video is directed specifically at assistant professors. I hope, though, that it does contain content that would be helpful for people in other roles as well. As I said, though, it does have assistant professors particularly in mind. And the reason for that is that I'm making this video in response to questions that I sometimes get from assistant professors, people on the tenure track, just regarding like things I wish I had known, right, when I was an assistant professor, or maybe advice that I would give now from this perspective, looking back on having been an assistant professor. So I'm going to share 5 things. I'm not going to share them in any order. It's not like a ranked list. Also, I want to just share up front, because if this is not what you're looking for, I don't want you to waste your time. I'm not going to be giving like hacks or tips. The 5 things that I'm going to share are more about mindset and sort of how we approach our work. So the first thing that I want to share is just the fact, and I'm going to state it as fact. I'm going to be that strong about it, that no one has it all figured out. Okay, period. And I mean, maybe that's obvious because no one and all, right? These are like strong words. Even so, I think we often operate from this kind of delusion that everyone else somehow received these perfect instructions for how to operate as an assistant professor, and we are woefully inadequate in our preparation. And I'm going to share sort of two stories that illustrate, I hope, that this is just common. This is just the way it is. So the first is, and I think I wrote about this in my book. So it never occurred to me when I was a grad student, certainly as an assistant professor, like it never occurred to me that the people around me, meaning like other faculty members when I was assistant professor, or certainly like the faculty members in my grad program, or even my fellow grad students, it never dawned on me that they were nervous or uncertain. I had one friend who was a godsend, and we sort of shared everything. And so I knew that she had the kind of self-doubt that I had too. But apart from that, I just looked around and saw people who seemed calm and self-assured and confident. And, you know, honestly, in my field, sometimes even too much so, bordering on arrogance. So it never occurred to me that they might feel uncertain and insecure until, you know, many years into my faculty position, when I started dating another academic, someone who I'd known and been friends with for a long time. And I still had no idea that he too, you know, got nervous before presentations or whatever, all of these things. And so that was a real eye-opener for me. So, you know, looks can be deceiving. People who you think have it all figured out, calm, cool, and collected, are probably not underneath the surface. This extends also to specific pieces of information. So sometimes I'll talk with people who express this, it's like almost a certainty, honestly, that they somehow were not trained the way other people were trained, or that they didn't learn as many things as other people learned. And I just want to argue that, well, sure, like all of our preparation is different, right? Each of us had a different experience. It's pretty common for people to come out of grad school just not knowing a lot of stuff. So I had a fantastic advisor. She was, I mean, we're still close now. She was incredibly supportive. She was immensely generous with her time. And still, I'm going to tell you about an experience that I think might surprise you. So when I was probably in my first year as an assistant professor, or maybe my second, anyway, whenever I got my first revise and resubmit, the only reason that I knew that you're supposed to take all of the referee comments and all of the editor's comments and respond to them point by point is because I had reviewed a paper, given them an R&R, gotten all this stuff back from them, and honestly, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like, they went really above and beyond. And I shared that with someone, and they were like, that's what you're supposed to do. The friend that I mentioned a few minutes ago had the opposite experience where she got her own R&R first, didn't know you were supposed to do this, submitted the paper with the revisions, and then the editor contacted her and said, oh, you forgot to include the response to the referee. And she was like, called me and was like, did you know we were supposed to do this? So, that's just one example. We all have gaps. And so please don't fool yourself. Don't operate under the delusion that everyone else has it figured out or knows what they're doing, because it's just not true. Okay, so that's the first one. No one has it all figured out, period. The second one that I'd like to share, the second sort of thing that I wish I'd known, or maybe I knew it, but knew it logically, but wasn't always able to embody it or live from it or really believe it emotionally, is the idea that teaching and service are real work. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure this is true, or imagine this is true for you as well, I heard people say, or frankly said to myself, and I regret that, oh, I didn't get any real work done today. Now, I might have taught for like 6 hours straight that day, right? And then did office hours and maybe had really meaningful conversations with students that were fulfilling to me and that meant a lot to me. And still, I didn't get any real work done. We don't do ourselves any favors with that kind of an attitude, not surprisingly, right? I think service, I think teaching, these are important aspects of what we do. Is not to say that research is not, in many cases, paramount, right? Or most important from a tenure and promotion perspective. It's simply to say that this other work that takes immense energy, a lot of time, and for many of us brings us a sense of fulfillment as well. I don't want us to view that as insignificant or not real. It hurts us to do that. And even for those who feel like research is absolutely their primary calling and they really would not spend time on teaching and service if they didn't have to, they still have to, right? It's still a part of the job. So if it's part of the job, I think it's real work. And I think we need to give ourselves credit for that real work. And also find whatever the right balance is for us in terms of the time and energy spent on each of the components of our work. Okay, so that's the second. Teaching and service are real work. The third is something I did not do. So this is definitely something that I wish I'd been able to do. Did I know to do it? Yes. Was I able to operate from that knowledge? No. And that is to share your work sooner rather than later. So let me give you a story, share a story. When I was in my second to last year of grad school, so my dissertation was coming along, but I wasn't yet on the market. I was working on a paper that was based heavily on the work of two other people, right? So an existing paper that was highly influential. And it just so happened that my advisor gave a talk at the institution where one of these people was and told him about my paper. And she came back and said to me, you need to contact so-and-so about your paper. And I was like, no. I don't know. I was afraid. I thought, I didn't know what he would say. He was, I looked up to him. I didn't know him. I was just afraid, and not just afraid of my interaction with him. I was afraid that he would, say something negative about the paper, or I don't know. So I didn't. She told me to, and I didn't do it. She never asked me, thankfully, because, well, maybe not thankfully. I probably would have done it had she asked, but she didn't. And I just stuck my head in the sand. Well, it turns out that the other person on that paper was working on a very similar follow-on paper to what I was doing. And the individual that my advisor had met with was wanting to let me know about that and connect me with this other person. Now, had I reached out, maybe we could have collaborated, which would have been a great thing. Instead, I kept working by myself on this paper that now turned out to have not just one competing paper, but actually one or two others. I think there were 3 total, including mine, papers on this exact topic, quite narrow. So there's sort of 2 lessons in here, in fact. The first is, as I already shared, to circulate your work or to tell people about your work before you feel ready to talk about your work, right? And that extends to if you're writing something up, don't spend a bunch of time perfecting it, right? Like, get input early on. Be upfront that maybe the idea is half-baked, right? You can go into someone's office and say, this idea is half-baked. I want to share it and get your initial reactions. So kind of set the bar appropriately, but don't hide and don't make everything perfect. Feel the need to do that before you reach out. So that's the main lesson here. I also want to say, though, connected to it is this fear of being scooped, which is real. And in fact, I have a blog post and a video on that particular topic that I'll link in the description. I want to say it is real. And I also want to argue that there is room in the world for more than one paper on a particular topic. In fact, if more people are writing about it, it probably means it's of interest to people, which is important. I will also say my story had a happy ending, despite, me not doing what I'm now saying I wish I'd done or could have done. My paper got published, as did the other two papers. All three of our papers got published, even though they were on identical topic and very similar approaches. So there is room. Okay. So share your work sooner rather than later, and try not to worry too much about being scooped. The fourth thing is, you aren't expected to know everything. I don't know, honestly, I think I was like born with the idea that somehow I'm supposed to know everything, and that if I don't, I don't know, people are going to think less of me, or I'm going to look stupid, or whatever it is. It's just not the case, right? We as scholars are learning. If we're not learning, what are we doing? And yes, again, we want to set expectations appropriately, right? I wouldn't go into a job market talk being like, oh, I just thought of this idea and that's what I'm going to present today, right? No, right? You spend time thinking about things appropriate to the context, right? At the same time, there's no way you could be expected to know everything, and people get really stuck in this. I know people who just try to read every paper on a subject before they start writing, right? This can really almost become paralyzing. So I just implore you to remember, you don't need to know everything, right? You need to be able to think things through. You need to be a thoughtful person. I think you need to be honest and humble. I prefer that. In the end, though, there's no way you can know everything, so stop setting that expectation for yourself. And finally, the fifth thing is that people are too busy worrying about their own stuff to spend a lot of time thinking about what you are or are not doing. So I'll share another story connected to this. So when I was an assistant professor, and this was years ago, right? So this was pre-COVID, I had been working from home quite a bit, and I was worried about what the department assistant, whose office I had to come through to get to my office, would think. I mean, even saying it, why is the department assistant thinking or caring about what I'm doing, right? She's not. But I shared this with my therapist, and my therapist said, that's self-aggrandizing. And I didn't. I mean, it hadn't occurred to me prior to that. And when she said it, it really had an impact on me, because that is the case, right? When we get stuck in our heads, when we're caught up in worry or anxiety, very often we are self-aggrandizing. We're somehow thinking that we and what we're doing or what we're not doing, that people are just constantly paying attention to that and waiting. We do that if we think, oh, I was supposed to contact someone yesterday and I didn't. Like, people have enough on their plates. Most likely, they're not sitting by the phone waiting to hear from you, or sitting at their computer waiting for the email to pop in. And if they are, they're grown-ups. They can let you know, right? And people, I've seen people get into pressure cookers over this. And if they haven't done something that they said they do, then the standard gets higher. It has to even be better. And this can just really snowball into something that's very unhelpful. So just remember, people have their own stuff to worry about. They're just not spending that much time thinking about you. And I say that in the most positive and freeing and liberating way. just to wrap this part up, I'll say I have a very wise client who said some time ago when he was talking about this, he was saying, yeah, and I'm afraid that everybody is going to think blah, 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 or everybody's going to say blah, blah, blah. And he paused and said, and by everybody, I mean the voices in my head. Because 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, that's where this is coming from, right? We're making it all up. So I hope that these 5 sort of, approaches, mindsets are helpful. I'll just recap, like, no one has it figured out. Teaching and service are real work. Share your work sooner rather than later. You are not expected to know everything, and people are too busy to be worrying much about what you are or are not doing. As I said, I hope these have been helpful. If so, I hope you'll let me know. If not, I hope you'll also let me know in a kind way, and let me know what you would rather see. And in the end, just thanks so much for being here, and thanks for being you.